Welcome, Saints fans and Who-Dats from all over the world. This is Kyle T. Mosley of the Saints News Radio Network here with the Crescent City Connection. Tonight we have on the panel Coach Rick Gailey from Sports NOLA, as well as the three tailgaters, as well as from the coach's office. I keep on wanting to say corner, Coach. How you doing, Coach?
I'm doing great tonight. It's good to be with you, and looking forward to week 2 of the preseason.
Definitely. And we have the professor himself from the Professor Speaks, as well as Saints News Radio, and the head almighty himself, Derek Craig Stevens. What's going on, D?
Don't start. It's too early. I'm trying to be nice. Dad is on the line, brother.
Watch yourself. All right. Well, look.
Hey, Dad. How you doing, buddy? I love you, man. How you doing, Dad?
I'm doing outstanding. Thank you so much. It's good to hear everybody's voice. Now we're getting into closer to football season with us all together.
I think, Dad, I'm gonna have to swipe your payment because I'm starting to need therapy with these injuries. So I'll be talking to you throughout the program because I think I'm gonna have to pull out the Black American Express card and pay you up because I'm starting to go into therapy session because I'm getting a little concerned.
Well, it's still early, Professor.
Yeah, well, okay. Yeah, it's early, but, man, we're talking about less than a month away. The Saints are going to be on the field against the Oakland Raiders in the Superdome. The good thing is the Saints are now traveling, and they should have been in Houston by now. Hopefully they made it. And I will have an opportunity to be at the practice field on tomorrow to visit with these guys as they are practicing with the Houston Texans on Thursday and Friday. So it should be pretty interesting to see. I had already got a message from the Texans media saying that because we are experiencing some rain here, that these guys may hold the practice inside of their bubble. So we shall see what happens there. And welcome to the show, Barry Hurstowitz. What's going on, Barry?
All right, doing fine, Kyle. How about yourself?
Oh, man, good to hear your voice. You guys know Barry from Big Easy Blitz, as well as the editor-in-chief of the Big Easy Believer. All right, well, we got a star-studded lineup for you guys tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about the Saints and what's going on. But before we go into that, we have two little things to speak about. Peter Finney, longtime just writer and just one of the most phenomenal sports writers that we have had in the New Orleans area, passed away. And it was sad for me to see the mentioning of his passing. But Coach, I think you knew Pete, didn't you?
Yes, I knew Peter, knew his son very well as well, Peter Finney Jr., who was also a writer. But I've known Pete for a long time. First as a participant in him covering me back when I was playing golf, both at LSUNO back in the day, and even playing in some professional tournaments in the late 70s, and then later on as a high school coach, also knew him from that, and then working in the business with him. So he's been around that long. Yeah. That he started writing before some writers were born. Bill Bumgardner, who also is a writer who I knew from all the way from high school, he said Peter Finney was writing before he was born, and he was still writing after Bill retired. So he's been around a long time. Just an incredible man, the most respectful person that perhaps I've ever met. Just respectful of everyone, but could see things in such a way that if you weren't watching the game that he was covering, you felt after reading what he wrote about it that you were there. And if you were watching a game that he was covering, you would see the game from a whole new perspective after you read what he wrote. Just a phenomenal person and a phenomenal writer.
Yeah. Barry, you grew up reading Pete just like myself and the professor. What are your thoughts?
Oh, well, he's the reason I'm doing this. I mean, he's the reason I'm sitting here talking to you right now. That's how much of an influence Peter Finney had on my life. Growing up in the New Orleans metropolitan area, as Coach can attest to, of course, he was Coach was playing in the metropolitan area when I was growing up. But
right.
as Coach, as he alluded to, I mean, he was everything, man. And that was a perfect analogy that Coach used just now. That his descriptions, the narrative of his stories were such that you felt. I mean, you saw, you could visualize. You could visualize every rebound. You could visualize every 8-foot jump shot that Pistol Pete Maravich took from downtown, before there was a 3-point line. You could visualize Archie Manning running for his life. Even if you didn't see the game, you had no idea that Archie Manning got sacked 5 times in that game because you read Peter Finney's article that afternoon or the following morning or whatever. You could visualize that Archie Manning was running for his life in that game. So he was just a brilliant, brilliant man, a brilliant writer. I unfortunately didn't have the pleasure of knowing him. But, I had the opportunity to see several videos of him talking and speaking and local New Orleans there, broadcast, WWL, WDSU, WVUE, whatever channel he'd be on. Mostly WWL probably maybe was one that I always saw him on when they'd be interviewing him for whatever. But I mean, he him and I know a coach will remember this name, and you will too, probably, Kyle, is Bob Roessler. I think I'm saying his last name right. Bob Roessler, who was also the editor of the Times-Picayune, I want to say in the late 70s, early 80s. And he was the one responsible, I think, for helping bring the Super Bowl to the city of New Orleans originally in the early 70s. That first Super Bowl, I think, in 70 or 71. I don't remember what year it was when Kansas City, I think, won the Super Bowl in New Orleans the first time. But, I mean, he was just, man, he was everything, man. Like I said, it was because of him that I took journalism in high school. When I got to high school, and thought about, because, they always tell you in school, what do you want to do with your life, when you become a teenager. And it was never a doubt. I knew I wasn't good enough to play sports. I knew I wasn't big enough to play sports. So I figured, well, if I can't play sports, I'll write about it. And, and my dad being a writer. So I guess it was just something that, that I was always interested in. And the first thing I thought of when I saw high school journalism class was Peter Finney, because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be the next Peter Finney. I wanted to be able to write like he wrote, and in my own writing style, I tried there. If you ever read my articles, you'll see a little bit of Peter Finney, his influence in my writing. So, just a remarkable man, and it's a great, great loss.
Yeah. Well, Barry, you keep on writing, man. We're going to be talking about you, so don't worry about that. Just keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, one day.
Just keep doing what you're doing. Professor, any thoughts about Peter Finney?
Well, I'm too young. I don't remember much about Mr. Finney because I'm only 25.
Yeah,
so,
right. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I don't know anything about that generation that Dad and Barry have been alluding to, Kyle. So, no, just kidding. All I remember is that's all I read. I mean, he was, as Dad and Barry stated, that's all I read. When I had the Times-Picayune, me and my dad, we would sit there, and he was where I got all my information. And one thing I liked about Mr. Finney is kind of the same respect I have for Barry and Dad. A lot of people in New Orleans sometimes don't want to face the reality of what you have to realize and come to the conclusion of by looking in the mirror. And one thing about Mr. Finney, he never was biased towards his things. He spoke his mind, he would write it, and he would say it, and he didn't care if the Saints or, Mr. Meekum or anybody else did not like it. He would tell you the truth. I mean, if the Saints were pathetic and pitiful, Mr. Finney was all right. He was an editor gangster. He did not care. He loaded and carried 2 barrels and aimed and shot in his writing, and he did not care in terms of. But you could always count on Mr. Finney to give you the truth. So it is a great loss and a great deal of sadness on today for all of us that have been blessed by the life of Mr. Finney. And he, to me, set the standard. I know a lot of times I'll say the controversial things and stuff like that, but I've learned from Mr. Finney, I've learned from Buddy D, and all of those people that if you're going to report, if you're going to give the facts, give the truth, but, be honest, because a lot of times in Mr. Finney's writings, he tackled the things that we didn't want to hear, that we did not want to read, but it was the truth. So God bless his life, and my prayers go out to his family and everyone on their loss.
Yeah, but yeah, good, well said. And one thing about him as well, you didn't hear anybody in the New Orleans Saints organization speaking against him. You didn't hear anybody saying that they were denying a interview with Mr. Finney as well. So, Mr. Finney, thank you for what you had contributed to our sports scene in the New Orleans area ever since I've been growing up, since the 60s. So, all right. And we lost Pete Fountain, guys, the great jazz clarinetist. I started playing music on clarinet myself. So, and, Mr. Fountain, one of the New Orleans legends and known worldwide for what he was able to contribute to our city culturally as well. All right, guys, the New Orleans Saints are headed to H-Town, and they will be facing, I would say, still wondering what type of team the Texans are going to field, but as well as that, still trying to figure out what type of quarterback they're going to field here in the Houston area. A lot of the fans are still optimistic but pessimistic about Brock's first showing last week. So we shall see how this New Orleans Saints defense are able to handle what happened in Reliant Stadium when these guys are going to Energy Stadium, I think it's called now, when they go against one another on Saturday night, and I will be there in attendance to see this. So let's kind of recap what happened on last week. Coach, you had a pretty good article talking about how some of the bad things still are bad things in the New Orleans Saints repertoire. So can you expound on that for the listeners?
Sure. Bad teams usually have several things in common. Number one, they turn the ball over, both through fumbles and interceptions. They give the opposition not only field position, but they give them extra possessions, or sometimes directly scores, as we saw this week. They commit penalties, usually in large numbers, and they have difficulty running the football, and they have difficulty stopping the run. There were many things that the Saints did well last week, and there's many things that we can be encouraged about. Not excited, but encouraged. But in the areas of turnovers, especially fumbles, penalties, and the inability to stop the run really is concerning to me, because that's something that is team wide and something that coaching has an impact on in all of those areas. And when you look at the 4 fumbles that the Saints had, losing 2 of them, 1 return for a score, when you look at the 2 interceptions, when you look at 15 penalties, 9 of them were accepted, averaging 2.6 yards a rush, giving up 5.9 yards a rush. You still have some things that are very concerning to me, because those are all factors that bad teams have in common.